Anything we did not hit that you would like to talk more about?
When you were talking to Lynn about the different resources and how we all have to come together, that's great. And you asked about the pretty much the resorts.
Yeah.
We have a strong relationship with the resort corridor. They allow us to go in there and work operations. They donate pretty much money and time and resources, and they provide overtime for us to be able to go in there. And it's growing. It's a growing relationship. But as technology grows and the casinos have that money and technology,
yeah,
it really assists in our investigations as we have to identify these victims or their sex trafficking suspects. So.
And they've also been an amazing partner by getting all of their staff from the moment you check into a hotel, their front desk staff is trained all the way through housekeeping and anybody that you can encounter. So they're being trained to identify.
And Ellen, how long have you been involved in sex trafficking here in Las Vegas, first off?
Officially since 2005. That's when our task force was formed.
So when we're talking about resorts, have they become more engaged over the years?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Annie, you too, we're talking about resorts. What kind of engagement is the resort community having for a smaller nonprofit grassroots organization like yours?
Well, in the very beginning when I first started doing, we call it our outreach, I got kicked out of a couple casinos. They were like, we don't want you here. I said, well, I'm trying to help you guys, but that's not the case anymore. In fact, one of the casinos that kicked me out actually was a whole, I don't want to say the name because I can't on television, but they actually un-86'd me from my original reason for being 86. And 86, by the way, if anyone doesn't know, it means you're getting kicked off for life. So they gave me this official, beautiful letter. You are officially welcome back to our properties anytime you want. You can come and do a sweep if you want. It was really, really nice. So I think the casino is actually doing a much better job, I agree. So
what do you attribute the shift in kind of viewpoint to?
I think, obviously, our problem here in Las Vegas, and then the awareness and the training that they've had. And there's still some properties that have not been trained fully yet that are kind of resistant, so we hope that they'll do it right soon.
I mentioned in my open that we do have this history of brothels going back to the 1800s. Yeah. They still exist in our rural communities, not our urban. I'm wondering, Brittany, what do you think that does for illegal sex trafficking in a city like Las Vegas? Do we have a lot of people coming in and just assuming that the entire state is allowing this?
Yes, I mean, not even the people coming in. I think our own Las Vegas residents sometimes don't realize that the sex trade is illegal here in Las Vegas, even though, 45 miles outside of Las Vegas, there might be a legal brothel. So it does a lot, and it brings a lot of attention, from the traffickers here to Las Vegas, because they can not only traffic their victims, in Las Vegas, but they can also go up to the brothels and utilize that as a point for trafficking.
Now, is that happening, Greg? So they're
the brothels?
They're using both. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of the Asian culture is massage parlors. And we have a lot of them in town that we will go in and work operations, and we'll get solicits, which means we get an agreement for money for sex inside. And, we could have a whole team just dedicated to that and the brothels, like she said. It's in every little suburb in Las Vegas. You will find either sex trafficking victims or their pimps, the people that are controlling them, the suspects. So it's everywhere.
Is it just in massage parlors? Are there other storefronts that we're seeing this type of activity as well?
I mean, the reflexologies, the foot massages, some nail salons. I mean, there's even been investigations in other clothing type lines and so forth, fronts for prostitution. We had an investigation recently on a income tax business, and it was just a complete front for that. So it's everywhere.
We kind of have a history here in the city of at least having the debate about decriminalization of something like this. How do you think that, Lynn, I'll ask you first, how do you think that might affect what is going on with sex trafficking trade if we were to make it legal?
Making it legal, I think, is going to be dangerous. Yes. Just like anything else, you have to work out the infrastructure of it. Just like when we legalize marijuana, we're still struggling with the issues and some of the other criminal elements that result because it's now an all-cash business. So there's a lot of factors, but I also think that would cause us to disguise some of the victims that would be hidden behind legal prostitution, and they wouldn't be as identifiable. and it would be a lot more difficult. But I also wanted to bring up that there's another element of human trafficking that we often don't recognize, and that's the juveniles that might be living on their own, they're homeless, they've been kicked out, and they're couch surfing, and they have to exchange sex for the food and the roof over their head. And it's not something that that they recognize that they're victims because they feel like they're doing it just to have that roof over their head. But the reality is they don't have a choice. That's how they're going to survive.
And I noticed in the Metro data that you provided that over 50% of minors are runaways.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. Annie, I'm wondering how you feel about the decriminalization conversation.
Well, I agree with what Lynn said about, them not, knowing that they're victims, especially when at that young age. But there's been reports and stats that say that when there is legalized prostitution in other countries, that it raises the illegal activity around the area that it's actually legal, and the crime goes up. So is that what we want in our valley? I don't think so.
Really good. Anything else we want to cover? I'll go down my list. Mel, you have anything else that you want us to hit? Yeah, I think so too. And I think we hit enough just in kind of public engagement. Is there any other recommendations we might have on? We didn't talk about transitional housing. That's true, Brittany. That was something I wanted to talk to you about. Yeah, let's talk about that. So we have shelters. We don't necessarily have transitional housing. For one thing, can you differentiate between what a shelter is and what transitional housing is? First off.
Sure. Here in Las Vegas and across the U.S., mostly shelter is considered about a 90-day emergency stay. And that's what we're seeing in our shelters here in Las Vegas is there is some flexibility that they have, but per regulations that they have to work by, even in domestic violence shelters, is that there's about a 90-day stay. And when we're talking about victims of complex trauma and all of the other factors that we talked about, do we really expect these people to have a job and some savings and stability in their life to be able to move on to independent living with little or no support? And that's just usually not the case. A need for transitional housing is huge. Having that kind of in-between or a longer stay possibility and a variety of housing options, just like what might work for me obviously is not going to work for anybody else at this table. Survivors have a variety of needs, especially if they're coming in with children or, family members or a variety of different factors that are really going to make a difference as to where they're staying or what kind of housing assistance they're getting.
They're living a certain life and a certain income when they're in the lifestyle. They're making money for their controller, right? So if we take them out of that and we put them in a 90-day transition place, they're sleeping there in a multi-bed room with people they don't know. It's uncomfortable, and they're used to living in a large house, maybe with nice cars and clothing, and it's hard for them. Why would I give this up, even though it's not what I want to do and not what I like, to go live here and not have anything?
Right.
It's just,
yeah,
we need
hard transition is, and Annie, as you mentioned, and then you're dealing with all the trauma too, right? So you're kind of getting it from both ends of just a complete life shift.
I think that's the main issue too, is the stability factor. And some girls can do real well after a year or 6 months or 9 months and sometimes 2 years. And I actually have very many repeat clientele that have came in for a year, went back out there, came in for another year. I have a girl right now that wants to come in for the 3rd time because she's just not ready to live life normal. And she needs a little bit more support and a little bit more healing. So it's a, like I said, a very, very loaded question, the housing. We really need more housing, I think, and I think that even beyond what we do at Destiny House, beyond the shelters for 90 days or 30 days, whatever it is, we need another place after our house for them to go, because there needs to be maybe a less of a structured type of living situation for them after they get out of Destiny House, so they can feel more free and independent, but yet still have that great support system.
And the funding question comes up again of how much funding that's going to cost, right?
It's going to cost a lot of money.
Lynn, I'm wondering, for one thing, is there anything in the works right now of trying to build more transitional housing within the county or within the city, and who funds something like that?
Well, that's been the biggest issue, is we know what the gaps are and we've identified what we need. It's just trying to get that funded. But I think we also, it goes beyond housing. We have to think of the support long term. Thinking about someone who's out of the life for 5 years and they now have a child and they're working minimum wage or whatever, and they've rebuilt their life, and then suddenly their child gets sick and they're missing a few days of work, and they also need to pay some medical bills, and then there's another bill that comes up, and suddenly there's that trigger that says, I don't want to do this, but it was easier. Yeah. And I can make money quickly, and then suddenly they go back into the life. So beyond the housing is also that long-term support that we need to be providing, and we sometimes forget after a case is adjudicated, after it's prosecuted, the victim is now free, as we say, but not really.
And I'm going to ask a difficult question. Can we put a time limit on this? I mean, how many years is it before we can say that a victim is potentially out of that type of lifestyle? Can we even say that? Annie, can we?
Oh, no, I don't.
No.
I can't. I'm being honest. I can't. Within myself, just for myself, before I started doing what I do, I was out of it for about 2 years, and I honestly think I don't think I was ready, but I pushed through the hard things. So if I am who I am and I've got this nonprofit now and I'm doing this work, I can't imagine someone that's not as strong as I am, that has pushed through as much as I am, trying to navigate life and be normal again. It's not very easy at all.
Yep.
It took everything in me to do it, and to not get, like you said, re-triggered is the key. But they're going to. The girls and the ladies and the men and the boys are going to get re-triggered into going back to what they know is simple, easy. It's going to fix this situation for a short period of time.
Yep.
You know what I wonder? In mental health, in chemical dependency, we recognize that it's a lifelong struggle, and we provide that lifelong support, whether it's through AA or therapy or whatever, and yet we're not recognizing that with recovery from complex trauma.
Right.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. We just did a show recently on opioid addiction. We talked about recovery, and that was exactly what we talked about, is the lifelong piece of that. And actually, even in opioid recovery, that's a big piece of awareness that needs to be developed, is that people don't understand it's lifelong. It sounds like awareness on this side could do same good. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your extra time. And